We're already underway here at Hockenheim with the first qualifying session for tomorrow's Fanatec GT2 European Series powered by Pirelli doubleheader. Separate sessions for the two races, and Q1 is the race one session. That is, as you can see, with cars on track already. You've not missed very much because they've only really done an out lap and they've got 20 minutes in which to do a time. So the session having a fairly gentle start. Earlier on in the day, we had the pre-qualifying session, which gave us an idea of times, and it was Benjamin Ricci who did the best lap, 1:41.093. We'll also have confirmed over the course of this who is going to be doing, of course, race one as the start driver, because the majority of cars are double driver entries. The number one Maserati, Leonardo Guarini, will do this session. 16 KTM Sedi Sarmini is behind the wheel. The number 18 Audi Michael Doppelmayr, the car that he shares with Pierre Caffer. Christophe Bourret is to be found in his Mercedes that he shared with Pascal Gibon. And we're waiting to see which of the Riccis, whether it's Mauro, I think it will be, or Benjamin for this session. Thomas Anderson will drive the Razzoon Racing KTM. As you look at Michael Doppelmayr going through, being chased there by 16 of Sedi Sarmini. Got Gilles Vanelay aboard his Mercedes, Eric de Donker in a Mercedes also, Martin Koch and Stefan Perrin, KTM and Mercedes mounted also. Stefan Rattel is due to be in this session in 88 Audi, but has not yet ventured onto the circuit, and nor has the Ricci Mercedes AMG run by the Acurdis ASP team. So far this year, pole positions have gone the way 3 times to Leonardo Guarini, twice to his co-driver Carlo Tamburini, and once to Pierre Caffer within Pro-Am. And in Am, it's 4 to Philippe Pret, 1 to Alexandre Leroy, and 1 to Gilles Vanelay, by way of a guide for who's going to be quick. Sedi Sarmini pushing on in the KTM. Last year's Pro-Am champions, Henri Hessid and Anthony Beltoise, have moved on for this year. Jan Krabec was the Am champion. He started the year in the series, had a couple of weekends of mechanical woe and decided he'd go off and do something else. So it kind of leaves the way clear for lots of different drivers to score results. KTM last year having 13 class wins based on different teams across Am and Pro-Am. There, Thomas Anderson with the KTM that he shares with Simon Birch. That's Alexandre Leroy's Maserati that runs in Am and also runs as a solo driver entry. So Alexandre Leroy does the racing on his own, and that means there's always a slight increase in the pit stop compensation time, because for a solo driver, if you do pick up any success in the pit stops, you add to it because you're a soloist and you've got an advantage, it is felt, by being in the car in both stints. You know exactly what the track conditions are going to be like. After the pit stop, you know what the car feels like, and you're able to get up to speed just a little bit sooner than drivers that are fresh into the cars. So 20 minutes each session, short break in between, because for some they need to do a driver change. For the majority, really, they need to do a driver change these days. Alexandre Leroy's time will be up soon. Gilles Vanelay's done the absolute best, though, in the first sector of the lap. Vanelay, Mercedes. And not much to choose between the best paced cars in sector 1 on this lap, although Leroy steps it out over the curb coming out of the Sachs curve. So Gilles Vanelay it is who has done the absolute best sector 1, and that's now bested by Philippe Pret, who we've not yet seen, but he is on his first flying lap. This is Alexandre Leroy. Thomas Anderson goes to pole position in the KTM on a 1:45.3. Alexandre Leroy goes quicker, 43.7. And that's the Thomas Anderson next lap, which is good enough for third. This is Sedi Sarmini. Stefan Rattel, by the way, did venture out a little bit later than the 1:02, but he's gone 5th fastest. And Mauro Ricci is also on track now. So we've got the full complement of the 13 for the end of the session. which is 11 minutes away. So although 20 minutes sort of sounds like a lot, it doesn't take long, but at the time you've taken an outlap out of it, for it to disappear quite rapidly. So there is, yes, 53. That's the Pascal Gibon and Christophe Bourret driven Mercedes. Christophe Bourret does this session. And having been rapid in sector 1, absolute best, he's now done a personal best in the second sector, as you can see, and brings that car up towards the stadium now. So Christophe Bourret at the wheel. Another quick-looking Mercedes is the car of Stéphane Perrin, treble 8, the former TCR racer and Creventic regular. And Martin Koch has just done an absolute best in the first sector in the number 812 KTM. So still quite a bit can shake out of this session, I think, before the end. Drivers with 10 more minutes still to go. And Martin Koch is the one that could put himself up at the top of the times come the end of the lap in 8:12. You're looking at the cars going up towards turn 2 there. But it is Alexandre Leroy the fastest, but this is the car that's the real danger. So 8:12, Martin Koch at the wheel of it. Shares with Reinhard Koffler. They've been on the podium, these two, for every event this year. The car hasn't been on pole for anything, but it's raced very, very well. So Koch heading now into turn 17, the last element of the lap, the last part of the stadium, up towards the timing line. And when he comes through on this lap, let's see what he can do. He's got to get into the low 143s, and it's a 43.6 that puts him second then. So the sectors were all improvements, but ultimately not quite as good a lap as the one from this car, the Maserati of Alexandre Leroy, that goes still fastest. So Alexandre Leroy back into the stadium. He's 4/10 up on the opposition at the moment, so it's been a good start to the lap, that's for sure. And as he makes the run now in through turn 15, there's no traffic to get in the way, particularly on this lap, so it's all looking pretty solid for Alexandre Leroy. Comes now into turn 17, up towards the line, will go through. And Alexandre Leroy a little bit down in the last sector. Philippe Pret, in the meantime, has got ahead of him. 143.0 for number 2, Philippe Pret. So it's a Maserati to the top, it's a Maserati second, and the other Maserati of Leonardo Guarini is sitting in the pit lane and is only 12th. Now, 8.5 minutes to go. There is time for him to go back out and improve, but it's a bit of a surprise to find him, you might say, struggling like this. So this is Martin Koch having another go to see what he can do about a pole position lap. Coming now through turn 17, heading up towards the timing line. Through he goes, second. So he dropped to third, back up to second. So that now means he's 43 thousandths shy of Philippe Pret for pole position. And it's not going to be all that easy to find that, because the Maserati is a well-driven car. Philippe Pret's just coming across the line as I say all of this, and the lap that he does is even quicker. He was slower than he had been in the middle sector, but he's just done yet another personal best and outright best lap, a 1:42.745 now, the first lap of the session, into the 1-minute 42s. They got into the 1:41s, though, in pre-qualifying earlier on in the day. So Philippe Pret not matching that, but in fairness, that was against a driver that's not in this session. That was Benjamin Ricci who did that time. Stéphane Rattel, meanwhile, is 11th in the times at the minute. The quicker of the two Audi drivers over Michael Doppelmayr. Philippe Pret has just done yet another absolute best sector 1. Philippe Pret, who runs in the AM class, looking for pole position number 5 of the season. What can Stéphane Rattel do? Can he improve on 11th? Green and green means it's good. the lap time is quicker, but it keeps him 11th in the classification. Goes through turn 1. Stefan has had a lap time cancelled, incidentally, within this session for going wide at turn 1, just to prove there's no favouritism. Track limits apply to everybody. That's Philippe Pret coming out of the turn 12 stadium approach with 6 minutes of this first part of qualifying still on the board. So Philippe Pret up to the line. Again, on his previous lap, he dropped a bit of time in the middle sector, but bookended it with purples. And on this lap, purple drops a bit of time, purple. And it's a 1:42.640. So it's another improvement, despite losing a fraction of time in that middle part of the lap, that middle sector. He's still able to piece it together well enough to deliver. So as the clock ticks on down, others still trying to improve, include Gilles Vanelay. This is Vanelay, 4th fastest, number 87 Mercedes, 3rd of the AMs. Interestingly, it's AM, Pro-Am, AM within the top 6. So the Pro-Ams, Eric Dodonka, Mauro Ricci, Thomas Anderson, Stefan Rattel, Leonardo Guarini, Michael Doppelmayr. They've got to find some pace, in a sense, to try and get themselves ahead of the AM drivers. Vanelay, very experienced campaigner. He's not missed a season in a long, long time, and sharing with another redoubtable character, Jean-Luc Bobelic. So Vanelay doing a Pret, in a sense, quick in Sector 1, losing a bit of time in Sector 2. Is this going to put him up onto the front row of the grid? He's on the 2nd row at the moment, 4th. Breaks the beam, stays 4th. But again, bookending it with improvements. It's the middle sector where he lost a fraction of time as well. Now, 61, this is Mauro Ricci. This is the car that was quickest in the pre-qualifying session earlier on in the day, but it was his son, Benjamin Ricci, that did the time. So Mauro Ricci goes through. And on that lap is up to 5th as Martin Koch goes up to 2nd once more in his KTM. So Mauro Ricci does improve. And 3.5 minutes just over remain. So Martin Koch then, 0.2 of a second back from Philippe Pret. And Mauro Ricci here, 5th fastest as he comes now into the Spitzkehrer. 1 or 2 of the double driver entries may feel, if there's no more time to be found in the set of tyres they're on, that they'll pit early, get the driver change done, and then they can be good to go in plenty of time for Q2. Others might stay out a little bit longer, just seeing whether or not they can squeeze any more life out of the rubber at the end. Mauro Ricci to the eye, looks like he's backed off a little bit. Yes, he is down in the first sector. And 1 or 2 coming into the pit lane. The big surprise out of all of this, though, is Leonardo Guarini, who is on track again, but the number 1 Maserati that was in the gravel 2 or 3 times in the pre-qualifying session, with Carlo Tamburini at the wheel, in fairness, not Lego, but Leonardo Guarini has just not yet come alive. In the first sector of the lap that he's on, it's slow. He ought to be able to improve on 12th, I'll grant you, but it's not yet showing. Ricci up towards the line. That's Alexandre Leroy once more. Let's see what this lap has in potential. It's a little bit down in that middle sector. Coming up towards the timing line now. Now, Now, having talked about Leonardo Guarini not improving, he ain't going to, because the car's just come down the pit road and there's not enough time to get back out again. So might be one to investigate that. Number 1, Maserati, possibly with a problem. 87, that's Gilles Vannelet to give way now to Jean-Luc Bobelic for the second session. It's not that the car can blast out now. There is the last minute or so of Q1, then the checkered flag. The teams have an in-lap. There's some time allowed for them, sort of 10-minute break or so in between, and then there's the 20 minutes to resume, bearing in mind that here at Hockenheim there's a very tight curfew of 6 o'clock, with engines having to be off by then. We're not heading to that yet, but the session will have to run to time, of course. Philippe Pret's car then, fastest, and that is a 5th pole position of the season now in AM. And the best in Pro-Am is a first of the year to Martin Koch. So a good effort by Martin, his first class pole of the season. And there is the real talking point of the session. Leonardo Guarini, second in the championship, but only 12th quickest outright. And that car having not come alive. The fact that it was off the road so regularly in pre-qualifying did make one wonder whether it had a problem. But equally, there's been ample time to have sorted that. But whether it's been for cancelled lap times, no. Nothing evident there that suggests there's been a series of transgressions. There is a pit lane speeding investigation hovering over number 1. It wasn't quick on the track, but it was too quick in the pits, ironically. Into the pit road has just come Alexandre Leroy. As you look at 53, Christophe Bourret, the Mercedes, which will be handed over very shortly, ready for the second part of qualifying to Pascal Gibon. So the teams are getting themselves set. 98, Eric de Doncker, who ended up 8th in the times. We'll hand that car over for the second part of the session to Loris Hazemans. So Philippe Pret, the fastest then at the end of Q1. From Martin Koch, 2nd, Alexandre Leroy, 3rd, Gilles Vannelet was 4th fastest, 5th, Mauro Ricci, 6th, Christophe Bourret, 7th, Stéphane Perrin, 8th fastest was Eric de Doncker, and 9th, Thomas Anderson. Seti Samini, 10th, Stefan Rattel, 11th, as Eric de Doncker enjoys life. 12th, Leonardo Guarini, and Michael Doppelmayr 13th in a car that could well top the times at the end of Q2. Pierre Caffer will take over number 18 Audi. So this the order then. Philippe Pret, the man on pole position, taking overall and AM pole. The best Pro-Am entry, Martin Koch behind. Alexandre Leroy, 3rd from Gilles Vannelet, and then Mauro Ricci. Christophe Bourret, 6th ahead of Stéphane Perrin and Eric de Doncker. Thomas Anderson, 9th from Seti Samini. Stéphane Rattel, 11th. Leonardo Guarini, only 12th. And Michael Doppelmayr rounding out the times. We've got 9 minutes, give or take, before the cars will be back on track. Alexandre Leroy's Maserati then, 3rd on the grid, 2nd in class. The driver new to the GT2 category this season, but showing pretty decent pace all round. There's Reinhard Koffler's car that he will take over from Martin Koch. Reinhard Koffler, former Formula Renault, Formula BMW racer until ran out of money, and came back a few years ago, courtesy of KTM, in the crossbow battle in the German GT Championship. We've seen him in GT3, but a very quick driver is Reinhard Koffler, and so too is Martin Koch, far less experienced, but has proved to be very rapid over the last couple of seasons that we've seen him racing. So 2 wins this year to Reinhard Koffler and to Martin Koch. 3 wins in Pro-Am to Leonardo Guarini and Carlo Tamburini, who will take over this car for the second part of qualifying. New boots going on it. Carlo Tamburini will take the car into the session. But Leonardo Guarini, there he is, standing by, looking rather agitated. And the team also, the LP Racing squad, peering in. There's something still not right around the back of the car. Maybe that was partly why it was going off the road earlier in the hands of Carlo Tamburini, because on 2 successive laps it went off at the same corner, which is all a bit of a curiosity. Luca Piri there standing by but not happy. Furrowed brows all round there. Whether Leonardo Guarini feels like talking to Antonia Rankin in the pit lane, her charms will dictate, but it'll be interesting to know what the problem is with that car, because it's pretty significant given how it's second in the championship. Klaus Angerhofer to take over the True Racing KTM here. And this, the car that is going to start race 1 on pole position. Philippe Pret. And after a frustrating second race at Spa, doesn't have to worry about any extra time in the pit lane, doesn't suffer from compensation pit stop times. So, well, these days Hong Kong based driver Philippe Pret, whose son Louis is here racing in GT3, heading up towards the curves in super slow-mo, runs it as wide as the regulations allow, keeps 2 wheels on the green. And they're the similar car for the TFT racing team of Alexandre Leroy, ready to go. Good to have Maserati back in GT racing, of course. Go back, gosh, is it really 20 years since the MC12 was debuted at the very end of the FIA GT Championship season in the dark blue livery. And good to have Maserati back in GT racing in the GT2 category. The car debuted at the back end of last year, and now to have the cars in the series this year is good indeed. And Carlo Tamburini there is going to get on board. We understand that Antonia's charms to talk to Leonardo Guarini have failed. He's not in a good mood after the travails in Q1. He won't tell us what they are, but he's clearly not happy. And the team's still working away as though there's something not right with the suspension, the balance of the rear of the car. If you can understand the semaphore, that might add more to the problems, but you get the feeling it's just very loose around the back of the car maybe, and not giving the driver the confidence. It'll be interesting to see what Tamburini can do with it though, because younger driver may have a different feel for it, might have a different perspective, might be able to drive around the problem to a greater degree. We'll find out very shortly once the next part of qualifying gets underway. And that's the car that will take honours and the point for pole in Pro-Am. Martin Koch doing the time in that first session. The car using plenty of curb on the outside of turn 16. And Martin Koch for a first pole position of the season in GT2 in the Pro-Am class. Good effort, and that very much puts the car in the mix for race 1, albeit it will have to serve 10 seconds extra in the first race for being victorious at Spa last time out. So Reinhard Koffler will get on board that car, ready for the second session, which is about just under 3 minutes away. So the pit lane for the moment is relatively calm, other than around number 1 Maserati, where there's great activity going on to try to get that car sorted out for the second session and to see what Carlo Tamburini can do. Alexandre Leroy gets back into 24. He knows exactly, if he ever got out, he knows exactly what the car feels like. He knows exactly what the track is like, as will Philippe Pret, of course, be in the same situation as another solo driver, the only other solo driver. More news from the LP Racing pit box is that the car is described as pretty much undrivable. They don't know what it is, that they're working on everything they can to see what can be done to try to make that car drivable, if not quick, for Q2. So frantic activity. But it must have deteriorated during the course of pre-qualifying, because it was 6th in that, but That was when Leonardo Guarini was doing the times, and Carlo Tamburini had, I want to say, 3 offs in the end. It was certainly 2, but possibly there was a third as well, which wasn't quite so severe. But it did give the impression that the car was struggling earlier on in that session. Mercedes badge adorning the car of Loris Hezemans, ready to go. The fast lane is now open, so if the teams wish, they can send the cars down to pit exit. Eric de Donker having vacated the car, Loris Hezemans having got on board. And in a moment, the car will be waved down the pit lane, and we'll be in business then, ready for Q2, which will be starting within the minute. 20 minutes then, once the session gets underway. Alexandre Leroy ready to go. Aboard number 24 Maserati. And the clock is almost at the bewitching hour to release the field. Benjamin Ricci in 61 Mercedes, I think, is going to be a man to watch in this session as well. Adding to Carlo Tamburini, depending on how drivable or otherwise the number 1 Maserati may be. And Reinhard Koffer in 812 KTM will be the other one to keep an eye on. That is Simon Birch, having taken over from Thomas Anderson. Alexandre Leroy given the signal to make his way down the pit lane. So, because with a 13 numbered entry, it's not that crucial to get track position. You can afford to go out a little bit late. It's not like a 50-odd car session where you've got to be at the front of the queue for track space. You can afford to go out a little bit later. And that's the drivers, I think, are doing that. They're letting cars go and then picking up the space by being released from the pit lane a bit later, rather than doing all of that on the track. So the size of the entry allows a little bit more creativity, perhaps, when the cars are released here. So, session is live, and quite a few, being quite laid back about it all. I think we've only had 2, 3, in fact, now go through the first sector. So Q2 underway, but a rather sedate start. Q2 for Fanatec GT2 European Series, powered by Pirelli. Alexandre Leroy is on track, Klaus Angerhofer is on track, Stefan Rossina having taken over from Stefan Rattel, and Jörg Wiebahn as well. There is Stefan Rossina now. That should be a quick Audi. I'm not saying it wasn't already, but Stefan Rossina, who raced successfully a good few years ago now in Porsche Super Cup, has been a regular KTM driver in this series on and off, and now finding something different to play with the Audi. Comes up against the Maserati of Alexandre Leroy. I think he's going to get past him on the run into the stadium, but through the stadium he might have a different approach. But Stefan Rossina then, a quick driver, took many years away from racing to go off and build up his business, has come back and enjoying racing at a different level. But Rossina was always pretty quick, the Slovakian, and he joined Stefan Rattel in the Audi. As you see, he's jumped ahead of the Maserati already, so Rossina is going to push right from the get-go in this session, and will offer up the benchmark time before anybody else as the car now comes through. Heads up towards the timing line, breaks the beam, and onto a flying lap now goes Stefan Rossina then, with behind him Alexandre Leroy coming up towards the line. He goes through. And Stefan Rossina, then we can just enjoy for a lap, I suspect, here as he goes purple in all the sectors. But comes towards the end of sector 1, out of turn 3, picks up the gear, picks up the speed, picks up a purple. So absolute best sector 1. First proper flying lap we've seen out of anybody, as Rossina then comes through the Parabolica, this long, long left up towards the Spitzkehrer. Goes all the way down through the gears. First gear some cars will take for this. It's a very, very tight corner indeed. Loops back on itself. That distinctive Audi engine note. And down towards the Mercedes arena comes Stefan Rossina. Turn 7, fast right. And then turn 8, which is a left-hander that is more than 90 degrees. Again, it tightens as you go round it. Kink at turn 9 and at 10 and turn 11. This is the run into the stadium. Turn 12 then, 2 purples to establish the benchmark time for the Audi. Very wide there, but 1 wheel left in contact with the curb. Stefan Rossina through the open face helmet, you can see hard at work. Comes out of that slightly banked Sachs curva, and now the little kink, the S that takes you through 14 and 15. 16 is the first part of the Sud curva, and then 17 brings you round up to the end of a lap. The timing line beckons, the clock on the gantry beckons, and Stefan Rossina will do the best lap thus far. It is a 1:41.830, purples across all the sectors. And would you believe, only 4 cars have been out. We've had very nearly 5 minutes, but only 4 cars. Now I say that, Benjamin Ricci is shepherded out of the pit lane in the Mercedes, so it's decided it's about time he went and did something. So Benjamin Ricci on his way down the pit road. Super slow-mo shot here of Stefan Rossina, hard at work, running it up the curb. And ready to go is Reinhard Koffler in number 812. Away he goes. So Rossina from Alexandre Leroy, 1.7 seconds. In fairness, this shows you the difference between a pro and an AM, and if it's a very experienced pro who's raced at a high level like Porsche Super Cup, like Rossina did, you can understand the difference in pace. They're going out is now Loris Hezemans. Stefan Rossina has not given up, by the way, because he's already done 2 more purples. So with the tyres a bit warmer and the fuel a bit lighter, the car getting quicker and quicker and quicker. Makes that run now into turn 16. So the last lap that he did was a 41.8. Alexandre Leroy, in fairness, he's doing purples behind him as well, as you can see. So Stefan Rossina, can he go quicker than a 41.8? The answer as he breaks the beam is yes, it's a 1:41.7. And there is Alexandre Leroy behind, who's had a really good lap here, put it together nicely. And as he comes across the line, he stays second, a 1:42.248, the lap time for Alexandre Leroy. This is Leroy's view up towards turn 2. Brakes, changes down to second gear. Back onto the power now through the parabolica. Over the timing line goes 888. That is Jörg Wiebahn at the wheel. Dorint Hotels backed Mercedes with a rattle of the curb. It also blends in quite nicely around the Hockenheim circuit with the Ravenel backing on this car, as it is around the circuit everywhere you look. So keeping the local sponsors happy is Jörg Wiebahn. This is a rather sedate outlap from Loris Hezemans, but he'll get well wound up in a moment, I'm sure, in the number 98 Mercedes as he comes up towards the line. So through goes Hezemans onto a flying lap. Still only got the 4 times, but now the road is busy, although number 1 Maserati still not on track, still not been sent out. There going through is Sedi Samini. Klaus Angerhofer rather, Samini having done Q1. It is now Klaus Angerhofer who's taken over this 4th placed KTM, but I suspect it might drop a little bit before the end. Coming to the pit lane is Alexandre Leroy, who's done the bulk of his work early on in this session. So Leroy is in. And Jörg Wiebahn, who is 3rd at the moment, there he is, has done an absolute best middle sector. So number 888 Mercedes chasing Philippe Pret, who got pole for race 1 up towards the line. goes through and stays third, oddly enough, despite all the improvements. But Jörg Wiebahn's overall lap being quicker, but it doesn't propel him any higher up the order. There is 888. Jörg Wiebahn heading now out of turn 3. So Benjamin Ricci has just started a flying lap. Jean-Luc Bobelik likewise. And that is Klaus Angerhofer, 4th in the times right now. Pierre Caffer, another man to watch. Michael Doppelmayer's co-driver. And Pierre Caffer trying to find the right moment to pull the pin, coming out of the stadium and try to go for pole. He's got a charging Stefan Rossina behind him in the other LP Racing Audi. So up towards the line comes Pierre Caffer, former Audi factory driver, of course, class winner at Le Mans for Ferrari, ex-single-seater racer, good caster in his very, very early days. And this car comes alive when Pierre Caffer is in it. He is much quicker than Michael Doppelmayr, and so pressing on up towards turn 2 goes 18 Audi. Stefan Rossina last time a little bit slower. Pretty much everybody has done a time, and I think number 1 has now ventured out. Can't see it in the pit lane anymore, so Carlo Tamburini at the halfway point, they've sort of had to shrug their shoulders and say, well, you've got to get a time in somehow, see what you can do, and sent him out. Pierre Caffer hustling on. Greens, not purples, interestingly. Stefan Rossina behind him is doing purples, and Loris Hezemans has done an absolute best. The purple, therefore, in the middle sector. If you look at the little timing tower there, you can see there are 3 lines next to the car number. If one of them goes green, it's a personal best. If it goes purple, it's an absolute best, and the yellow means it's a little bit slower than the previous best. So Hezemans, first of all, let's see what he can do. 11th at the start of the lap, and goes quickest of all as he comes through. Loris Hezemans for the Mercedes Team 98, 1:41.3, and that takes Rossina's time away by 0.4 of a second. And it all looked quite understated in that Mercedes, whereas the Audi has been a flurry of activity. The way that Rossina drives it, it's a bit more darty, a bit more edgy a car. Here comes Pierre Caffer. Let's see what he can do as his first flying lap. 3rd as a prediction, goes across the line. Only 5th, in fact, for Pierre Caffer. Rossina goes through and is 2nd, that lap a little bit slower again. Now, number 1, the Maserati plot thickens because I can no longer see it in the pit lane, suggesting it had left the pit lane and gone onto the track. It has not registered in any sector, therefore suggesting it's left the pit lane to go to the paddock and won't go out in this session at all. And they're working on it elsewhere. So, big dramas for LP Racing. So, we're down to 12 cars, therefore, for this session. But it sounds pretty serious if the car can't go out at all. And a very frustrated driver, Leonardo Guarini, not wanting to tell much about it. Hezemans then. Down in the middle sector of this lap. Pierre Caffer has done a purple this time around, so he's done an absolute best sector 1 on this lap. So Hezemans will break the beam. Behind him is Simon Birch, number 80 KTM, who goes through and 7th. Down the pit road has just come Jörg Wiebahn. Pierre Caffer coming up towards the line, goes through now. And up to pole position goes Pierre Caffer then. So he's gone by 1:40.697. And Pierre Caffer then 0.6 up now on Loris Hezemans. 0.6 is quite a margin. And we've got 7 minutes of the session to go. So Pierre Caffer presses on, see if he can wring another lap out of it. No, he's down in the first sector of this lap. There is Benjamin Ricci, who could put himself up to the top at the end of this lap, because he has done, as you can see, an absolute best in the middle, a personal best at the start, and he did a 1:41.9 in the pre-qualifying session earlier on in the day, suggesting that car's got good pace. Is it good enough to put him up to the pointy end? We're about to find out. He chases Jean-Luc Bobolic over the line. Benjamin Ricci goes second, indeed, onto the front row of the grid. So Pierre Caffer and Benjamin Ricci are the top two at the minute. So through comes Benjamin Ricci to see if he can find half a second, or a fraction over half a second, to give him pole position here. Pierre Caffer is still on track, 5.5 minutes is still on the clock as well, so the session coming to its close, but without, as I was saying, number one, that Maserati having retired hurt the paddock for more work to go on prior to tomorrow's races for the GT2 European Series. Race one of which will be early on in the day. The cars will race at about 10:30. And then the second race rounds out the weekend at just after 3:30. So there's not that much time to get the car sorted, and there's not that much time between races. So the teams will be hoping for a drama-free first race at least. This is Simon Birch in number 80. And he's done a personal best within the first sector of this lap. Simon Birch having moved to the GT2 scene this year from the Danish Yokohama Super Cup, from the Le Mans Cup GT3 class, in which he drove a Honda for a time last year, and also Danish Super GT racing. So different type of car altogether, the KTM, the Milwaukee Tools car. And with Benjamin Ricci pitting and also coming in Loris Hezemans, that gets the road clear ahead of Simon Birch to try to improve. 9th he was at the start of the lap, 2 personal bests on the lap, put him 7th at the end. Alexandre Leroy's gone back out in 24 Maserati, having fallen to 8th in the times now. And that's Reinhard Koffler, who, as you can see, had done a personal best sector one, but has slowed considerably in the stadium. Now, he'd lost a fraction of time, and he's picking up pace once more. So whether he made a small error and decided to abort the lap, hard to know, but Koffler started off okay. Stefan Rossina here, still pressing on. Koffler up to second on his previous lap anyway, a 1:41.131, and he's going to have possibly 2 more rolls of the dice. Rossina now down to 5th in that Audi. That is Loris Hezemans, who has come in from 4th in the times. Philippe Pret is in also, the quickest of the AMs. It's going to be another pole position for him, seemingly. So he's only 6th overall in this session, having been on pole outright in the earlier one, but it's a class pole position anyway. Probably come in to see if there's anybody from the team left. They've all cleared off with number 1 to go worry about it, but he's found some engineers. That's Alexandre. No, it's not. That is Reinhard Koffler's KTM. Alexandre Leroy is still out there, but at a different part of the racetrack. Coming into the stadium, Reinhard Koffler again looks like he's backed out of the lap, strangely. So hard to really work out what he's up to in that car. And off the road is 16, which is Klaus Angerhofer. That's up at the Spitzkehrer, I think. And that's brought out a yellow, and that's probably the session over, because even if it is allowed to carry on, a yellow flag is going to affect people's times. To move that car, they're going to have to red flag the session, and it's not really worth doing it for 2 minutes, because an outlap would be more than that. So that rather looks like the end of the session. Oh, it's at turn 2, in fact, the car has gone straight on. So it's up the escape road, Klaus Angerhofer out of the car. but with a yellow flag, people shouldn't be improving anyway. Reinhard Koffler did last time before the yellows came out, but Klaus Angerhofer is okay, and a red flag is shown. So with 1:40 on the clock, which is about a lap time, the session comes to an end because they wouldn't get an outlap in before the time ran out. So the session will not be resumed, and the red flag then ends qualifying for the GT2 European Series, with Klaus Angerhofer's car needing to be retrieved. Hopefully the problems can be cured for that. It's had a tough day. It was a downshift problem the car suffered from in pre-qualifying. They eventually cured it and sent it out, but I wonder whether it's been a recurrence of that to stop the car trackside. Straight away, the DMSB incident vehicle goes to attend. And there is Klaus Angerhofer, who will get a lift back to the pit lane and will hopefully be able to go into tomorrow's races with a car that's behaving itself. Alexandre Leroy there, making his way back to the pit lane, and he is second in AM. But at the end of the session then, it's pole position number 6 in the AM class now for Philippe Pret, and Pierre Caffer taking a second pole of the season in the Pro-Am class. So Pierre Caffer topping the times by 0.434 of a second from Reinhard Koffler, and Benjamin Ricci is third fastest. Loris Hesermann's fourth ahead of Stefan Rossina, then Philippe Pret from Alexandre Leroy, the top 2 in AM, chased by Jörg Wiebahn, then Simon Birch from Pascal Givon, Klaus Angerhofer, who's caused that early red flag, Jean-Luc Bobelic, and we didn't see Carlo Tamburini. That'll be really interesting. Problems cured, we hope, to watch that car up from the rear of the grid tomorrow. So look at the highlights then of the GT2 qualifying, with the field streaming out and different cars showing differing levels of pace at differing times, really, with Alexandre Leroy's Maserati being pretty quick throughout. We had Martin Koch looking good in the first session, that car taking the first pole position for Martin, and Reinhard Koffler putting it second in the second part of qualifying for Q2, for race 2. But it was Philippe Pret who was the fastest driver out of that first session, with the drivers then getting themselves ready for the second element of qualifying, a driver change for most of the cars. Alexandre Leroy, one of those soloists who stayed therefore behind the wheel of his car, and Benjamin Ricci took over from his father to go third fastest behind Reinhard Koffler in Q2, and then Pierre Caffer putting Audi number 18 on pole position. We look forward then to 2 good races from the GT2 European Series tomorrow here at Hockenheim.